From James Toney publicly taking shots at his character,
By the way, if you touch the Holyfield again, tell him to stop beating his wife.
and Bobby Shea accusing him of dirty tactics in the ring. In this video, we break down the boxing legends who exposed why Evander Holyfield became one of the most widely disliked figures in the sport, starting with the rival most closely tied to his name, Mike Tyson. On November 9, 1996, Holyfield was a resounding underdog. He stopped the bullish Tyson in the 11th round in one of the greatest upsets in boxing history. The rematch on June 28, 1997, was supposed to settle the score. Instead, it produced the most infamous moment in sports history. Frustrated by Holyfield's clinching and what he perceived as intentional headbutts, Tyson snapped. He spit out his mouthpiece and bit a chunk of Holyfield's ear off. When the fight resumed, he bit the other ear. Tyson explained himself after the fight.
He butted me again. He kept going down and coming up, and he charged into me. And no one warned him, no one took any point for him. What am I to do? This is my career. I can't continue getting butted like that.
His frustration over headbutts was real. He felt abandoned by the referee and pushed past reason.
I got children to raise, and this guy keeps butting me, trying to cut me and get me stopped on cut. I gotta retaliate.
The incident led to Tyson's disqualification, suspension, a $3 million fine, and a revoked license that severely damaged his career. Tyson spent years calling Holyfield a dirty fighter. Holyfield called Tyson mentally weak. Their rivalry was forever defined by blood, teeth, and a piece of ear that changed the sport. Next up is a former cruiserweight champion who turned a routine 1996 tune-up fight into one of the strangest accusations ever leveled at Holyfield. Bobby Ches. The fight itself was one-sided. Holyfield controlled the action from the opening bell, pressing Bobby with body shots and combinations that left the smaller man struggling. But after the 5th round, Bobby refused to continue, claiming Holyfield had rubbed a foreign substance from his gloves into his eyes, causing burning and vision impairment. Referee Ron Lipton inspected Holyfield's gloves at ringside and found nothing, ruling the stoppage a TKO victory for Holyfield. The whole scene was bizarre. ESPN later aired a video suggesting Bobby may have also been dealing with a back injury, raising questions about whether the eye complaint was genuine or an excuse for a lopsided beating. But Bobby never let it go. He continued to accuse Holyfield of dirty tactics like low blows and using substances on his gloves, even mocking the Warrior's image in interviews afterward. It was a fight that somehow generated more controversy after it ended and during the 12 minutes it lasted, setting the tone for the kind of drama that followed Holyfield everywhere he went. Moving ahead to a boxing legend who was part of the most frustrating chapter in Holyfield's entire story, Nikolai Valuev. This is the 7-foot Russian giant who somehow walked away with a decision that still enrages boxing fans to this day.
He had always been bigger than everybody.
So this guy's fingers are so big that a toilet paper roll is tight on his finger.
The year was 2008. Holyfield was 46, pursuing the dream of becoming the first 5-time heavyweight champion. On December 20th in Zurich, he faced the WBA title holder who towered at 7'2" and 320 pounds. For 12 rounds, Holyfield outmaneuvered the lumbering champion with speed and combinations, outlanding Valuev significantly in what observers described as a clear Holyfield victory. Then, the scorecards dropped. Majority decision, Valuev.
We go to the scorecards. 114, 114, even.
Wow.
The disbelief was audible. Nick Charles called it the worst display of officiating he had ever seen, and widespread accusations of European judging bias exploded. Holyfield made his feelings known plainly.
Everybody know that I won that fight. That was Don King fight at that time.
There we go.
And so he got the decision.
A robbery that denied him a place in history, leaving a wound that never healed. Moving on to a name most casual fans have completely forgotten, Vaughn Bean. In September 1998, Bean made the aging Holyfield look vulnerable. The fight was supposed to be a standard mandatory defense at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, a hometown affair where the champion would handle business before unification talks with Lennox Lewis. Nobody gave Bean a real chance. He was an unheralded underdog with a lackluster resume walking into a champion's backyard. Instead, Bean pushed Holyfield to a hard-fought unanimous decision, surviving 12 full rounds and countering effectively enough to dent the champion's aura ahead of the biggest fight of the decade. Bean absorbed punishment but kept firing back, showing resilience. There was even a controversial 10th round knockdown where Holyfield appeared to push Bean into the ropes before landing a right hand, sparking debates about whether the ruling was legitimate. Holyfield took a pay cut tied to gate receipts for the fight, and the whole evening felt like a tune-up that backfired spectacularly. Bean later expressed disdain for Holyfield's team tactics and how things were handled, claiming he deserved more credit than the boxing world was willing to give him. Next is the man Holyfield himself called his toughest opponent ever, Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Their first fight on July 12, 1986, was a war of attrition lasting 15 brutal rounds. Holyfield, with just 11 professional fights, faced a former champion who had survived deep rounds many times before. Ring Magazine called it the best cruiserweight fight of the 1980s and one of the last great 15-rounders in history. Holyfield won by split decision, but the cost was staggering. He lost 15 pounds during the fight and was so dehydrated that doctors later discovered a kidney problem from the extreme toll.
That fight ended up in 1 hour. I lost 15 pounds.
How you do it?
I just didn't quit.
Qawi never gave credit. Before the fight, he predicted Holyfield could not survive 15 rounds against him.
You know, I knew, I watched him on TV, he fought my sparring partner on ABC. He couldn't even go 4 rounds, 6 rounds. No way, I thought he was gonna go 15 rounds with me.
He underestimated the young fighter who simply refused to quit. Their December 1987 rematch told another story. Holyfield unified the WBA and IBF cruiserweight titles with a dominant 4th-round knockout, ending all doubt about who was the better fighter. Up next is the South African heavyweight who turned a 2010 bout into a spectacle of pre-fight drama, cancellations, and eventual chaos. Francois Botha. The fight was originally planned for Uganda, but multiple cancellations due to promoter issues and Botha's scheduling conflicts pushed the event to Las Vegas. The delays dragged on for months, turning what should have been a straightforward matchup into a drawn-out saga that tested everyone's patience. By the time they finally met at the Thomas and Mack Center on April 10, 2010, Holyfield was 47 years old. Most fighters his age are decades removed from competition, sitting ringside with commentary headsets, not lacing up gloves against active heavyweights. Botha outworked him early, leading on 2 scorecards through 7 rounds while tying Holyfield up constantly, using his clinching to smother any offense the aging champion tried to mount. But Holyfield's veteran savvy showed up when it mattered most. In the 8th round, a straight right dropped Botha for the TKO, earning the real deal the vacant WBF heavyweight title. Botha, known for controversies in his own career including steroid positives and a DQ loss to Mike Tyson, had spent the entire build-up calling Holyfield past his prime and questioning whether he still belonged anywhere near a professional boxing ring. The fight was built on disrespect and delay, and nobody asked for it, but somehow it ended with the old lion still standing. That was the maddening thing about Holyfield. You could disrespect him, doubt him, and write him off completely. He just kept coming back and proving every doubter wrong, moving ahead to the man who shocked the world by beating Mike Tyson and then went ahead to get a rude awakening from the real deal. Buster Douglas. On October 25, 1990, Douglas walked into the Mirage in Las Vegas at 246 pounds, 15 heavier than when he upset Tyson. Holyfield arrived at a lean 208. Holyfield was not concerned.
When you saw that weigh-in and saw the way he looked, what'd you think?
No, it wasn't nothing to think because I had seen him fight. He was a big guy anyway.
He had studied the tape and knew exactly what he was dealing with. He dominated a sluggish Douglas, knocking him out in the 3rd round with a counter right cross after Douglas missed a wild uppercut. Douglas later spoke about the darkness that followed. Douglas spiraled into depression after the loss, ballooning to nearly 400 pounds and eventually falling into a diabetic coma that nearly killed him. He blamed everything leading into the fight, from lawsuits with Don King to personal tragedies. Holyfield never saw it as personal, just competition. But for Douglas, that October night was the beginning of the darkest chapter of his life. This next boxing legend's name carries personal weight going all the way back to the beginning. Henry Tillman. Before Holyfield became the real deal, before the cruiserweight titles and heavyweight glory, he was an amateur fighter with Olympic dreams. In 1984, Tillman defeated Holyfield twice, first in the U.S. Olympic trials and then in competition, effectively knocking him out of gold medal contention. To make it worse, Holyfield's Olympic run ended with a controversial disqualification for hitting opponent Kevin Barry on a break, a decision that denied him a fair shot at gold and sparked outrage over questionable officiating. He received a jury-awarded bronze as consolation, but the bitterness of those amateur losses never left him. He carried that resentment into the professional ranks like a weapon. When they finally met as pros on February 14, 1987, Holyfield was another animal. At 13-0, he overwhelmed Tillman with aggressive combinations and hooks, dropping him 4 times before the referee stopped it in the 7th round. The message was unmistakable. The amateur kid who lost was gone. In his place stood a professional destroyer who remembered every slight. Tillman was the first to learn what happened when Holyfield settled a score. Next up is one of the finest heavyweight champions in history who stepped into the ring with Holyfield, hiding a secret nobody knew about. Larry Holmes. He fought Holyfield on June 19, 1992 at Caesars. Palace with a detached retina suffered 4 weeks before the fight.
I couldn't see. I had a detached retina.
He could not see out of one eye. But the payday was $10 million, and Holmes was not walking away from that. Holyfield retained his undisputed title via unanimous decision, outworking Holmes with aggression and body shots over 12 hard rounds.
I went into the ring with one eye. This eye was out.
A severe cut from an accidental elbow in the 6th nearly stopped the fight. Holmes admitted he could not train properly due to injury. But when asked who was the better boxer between Tyson and Holyfield,
Holyfield's the better boxer, but Mike Tyson is a stronger fighter. You know, see, Holyfield, when he trains.
Holmes did not hesitate. Still, Holmes criticized Holyfield's style and called him part of a weaker era, carrying resentment over his own underappreciated legacy for years afterward. This next boxing legend was a man who almost pulled off one of the great heavyweight upsets, Bert Cooper. On November 23, 1991, in Atlanta, Holyfield was defending his WBA and IBF titles against a late replacement nobody expected to be competitive. The original opponent was supposed to be Mike Tyson, but an injury forced his withdrawal, and Francesco Damiani also pulled out. Contracts were signed just 3 days before the fight, and Cooper stepped in as a massive underdog at plus 2,000 odds. Nobody in that arena expected what was about to happen. Holyfield dropped him in the first round with a body shot and seemed to be cruising toward an early night. Then, the third round happened. Cooper landed a right hand that sent Holyfield crashing to the canvas for the first time in his professional career. The Atlanta crowd went completely silent. For a few terrifying seconds, it looked like the champion might not recover from the devastating shot that had buckled his legs. Holyfield did recover, coming back to batter Cooper with relentless combinations until the referee mercifully stopped it in the 7th round. But the aftermath was ugly. Cooper's corner alleged Holyfield used an ointment on his body or gloves during the fight, accusing the champion of using a foreign substance that made him slippery and difficult to hit cleanly. Cooper himself left the arena that night absolutely convinced that a full training camp with proper preparation would have changed the outcome entirely. Moving ahead to the lightning-handed middleweight, who moved up to heavyweight and made Holyfield look helpless, James Toney. Their October 2003 fight in Las Vegas was supposed to be another routine night for the real deal. It became one of the IOT's most humiliating losses of his career. Holyfield himself pondered what went wrong. He was not just beaten, he was embarrassed. Toney dominated with slick defense and sharp counters, dropping Holyfield in the 9th before his corner threw in the towel. Holyfield was the 8-5 favorite, ranked number 4 in the division. None of it mattered. After the loss, Holyfield suspected Toney of using performance-enhancing drugs, stating of course he was when asked about steroids. Toney showed zero respect in the aftermath, and in a separate interview, he took shots at Holyfield directly. There was no love lost between these two, and the fight drew criticism as a mismatch, highlighting Holyfield's decline against Toney's elusive mastery. Moving on to the Russian champion who called Holyfield dirty to his face, Sultan Ibragimov. Before their October 2007 bout in Moscow, Ibragimov publicly labeled Holyfield a dirty fighter who relied on headbutts and elbows, referencing the same accusations Tyson had leveled a decade earlier during their infamous rivalry. The fight itself was lopsided, though not in the way anyone hoped. Ibragimov retained his WBO title via unanimous decision, outlanding Holyfield 139-58 with superior speed and movement that made the aging challenger look like he was fighting underwater for most of the 12 rounds. Holyfield, approaching 45, showed occasional flashes of power that reminded everyone what he once was, but he simply could not close the gap against a younger, faster opponent who kept him at range all night long. After the final bell, trainers and observers urged Holyfield to retire, citing his inability to counter effectively and warning that continuing down this path would only lead to serious damage. He refused every single plea. He insisted the dream of a 5th title was still alive, that he could improve his conditioning and come back stronger than he showed that night. The fight also carried controversy when Ibragimov's manager allegedly stiffed him on $1.59 million from the purse, adding financial chaos to an already messy and disappointing chapter in Holyfield's long and storied career. Moving ahead to a living boxing legend in his own right, George Foreman. Their April 1991 fight, billed as the Battle of the Ages, was supposed to be a passing of the torch. Foreman had other plans. At 42 years old, he refused to go down despite absorbing tremendous punishment, landing countershots that Holyfield admitted rattled his teeth. One punch in particular stayed with Holyfield for decades. He literally could not move his feet. Holyfield won the unanimous decision comfortably, but the fight exposed limitations of a former cruiserweight against a true heavyweight with terrifying power. Foreman's team mocked Holyfield before the bout, calling him a cello instead of fit as a fiddle. The tension between them was not built on insults. It was built on something worse: the looming danger of fighting someone who simply refused to go away, who smiled between rounds and treated every bomb like a love tap. That kind of opponent gets inside your head in ways a screaming rival never could. This next boxing legend was an Olympic gold medalist with an iron chin and enough power to make any heavyweight think twice. Ray Mercer. On May 20, 1995, Holyfield returned from a brief retirement caused by a misdiagnosed heart condition and chose Mercer as the test. It was a calculated gamble to prove the doubters wrong. It nearly cost him everything. Holyfield won a unanimous decision in Atlantic City, but it was a brutal war where both men were hurt multiple times throughout a fight that had the crowd on its feet from the middle rounds onward. The 8th round saw Holyfield land a vicious left hook uppercut that dropped Mercer for the first time in his entire career. But Mercer came back. His heavy countershots opened a cut over Holyfield's eye that required medical attention between rounds and had the champion holding on more than once just to survive the onslaught. After the fight, Mercer questioned Holyfield's sharpness and heart, suggesting the champion had declined significantly since his prime years. Mercer's pre-fight psychological mind games and pointed post-fight comments added fuel to the rivalry. For Holyfield, the Mercer fight proved he still had something left in the tank after the health scare. For Mercer, it was a close loss that deserved far more recognition than the boxing world was willing to give. The frustration of that narrow verdict never left him. This next man drove Holyfield crazy and tested his patience more than any knockout artist ever could. John Ruiz. The Quiet Man fought Holyfield in a trilogy between 2000 and 2001, defined by controversy, frustration, and mutual contempt. The first fight saw Holyfield win a unanimous decision to become the first 4-time heavyweight champion, but the scoring was widely criticized, with Ruiz calling it highway robbery without a gun. Ruiz avenged the loss in March 2001, winning a unanimous decision and dropping Holyfield to become the first Latino heavyweight champion in history. Their rubber match made things worse. The split draw retained Ruiz's belt and left Holyfield convinced the judges had failed him again. Ruiz's clinch-heavy style was the opposite of everything Holyfield loved about boxing. No flow, no rhythm, just grinding physicality that turned every round into a wrestling match. Ruiz accused Holyfield of getting gift decisions based on fame, while Holyfield disliked Ruiz's style so intensely he considered it a mockery of the sport. A trilogy built on slow-burning mutual disgust. Next up is the slick southpaw who made Holyfield look old on national television. Chris Byard. On December 14, 2002, Byrd won the vacant IBF heavyweight title with a unanimous decision that was lopsided on all 3 scorecards. But it was not the numbers that stung. It was the way Byrd did it. He used a relentless jab, superior foot speed, and an elusive style that had Holyfield swinging at air for 12 rounds. To add insult, Byrd stuck his tongue out at Holyfield during the fight, mocking the legend in real time. Holyfield abandoned his jab entirely and could not mount a consistent offense, later blaming a left shoulder injury. But the reality was simpler. Byrd was faster, smarter, and better prepared that night. The loss denied Holyfield a record 5th heavyweight title and led to widespread calls for retirement, suggesting he was down for the count. Holyfield later admitted that he disliked fighting elusive defensive fighters unwilling to stand toe-to-toe. For a warrior who built his legacy on fire and fury, being outboxed by someone who refused to engage was not just a loss. It felt like an insult to the spirit of the sport. This next British giant broke Holyfield's heart with cold efficiency and exposed cracks in a system that was supposed to be fair. Lennox Lewis. Their first meeting on March 13, 1999 at Madison Square Garden was to crown an undisputed champion. Lewis dominated, outlanding Holyfield 3-48 to 130 and controlling most rounds with his jab and calculated distance. The result should have been a formality. Instead, judges delivered a draw that was condemned as a robbery. Don King was at the center of the storm. Emmanuel Stewart was furious, calling out what he saw as the destruction of the sport, saying Lewis controlled the fight and it was not even close, and that this is what's killing boxing. The November 1999 rematch left no doubt. Lewis won unanimously, unifying the heavyweight titles, though Holyfield insisted he had won both fights. The two traded barbs for years. Lewis allegedly called Holyfield shot and living off his name, while Holyfield questioned Lewis's heart and called his style cautious and cowardly. A rivalry fueled not by explosions, but by the cold, calculating dominance of a man who simply outthought Holyfield at every turn. Next on the list is the ultimate betrayal story. Hasim Rahman. He spent years as Holyfield's sparring partner, learning every technique, studying every weakness, absorbing every secret the champion shared during countless hours together in the gym. Then, he turned it all against him without hesitation. Rahman allegedly leaked details about Holyfield's training camp struggles to other fighters, giving away trade secrets considered the ultimate betrayal in boxing. Their June 2002 fight in Atlantic City was meant to settle scores once and for all. Instead, it created more controversy. An accidental head clash in the 7th caused a massive hematoma on Rahman's forehead, described as tumor-like and gruesome, and the fight was stopped after 8 rounds with a technical split decision for Holyfield. Rahman accused Holyfield of intentional headbutting, echoing the exact same complaints Tyson had made years earlier. But the worst damage came outside the ring where no referee could intervene. Rahman spread rumors about Holyfield's finances, questioned his dedication, and mocked his religious beliefs as a facade. He reportedly told other fighters exactly how to hurt Holyfield during sparring, handing opponents a blueprint to exploit the champion's vulnerabilities. For a man who valued loyalty as deeply as Holyfield did, this was not rivalry. It was a knife in the back from someone he had trusted completely and welcomed into his inner circle. Next up is a legend who gave Holyfield 3 of the most brutal nights in his career. Riddick Bowe. They were friends before they were enemies. Holyfield had helped Bowe as a young amateur, giving him sparring time and financial support. But Holyfield admitted he ignored his mother's advice never to befriend someone he would have to compete against, and it cost him dearly. In November 1992, Bowe used insider knowledge of Holyfield's weaknesses to dethrone him as undisputed champion in a fight that produced one of the greatest rounds in heavyweight history. Bowe acknowledged what that 10th round meant. Holyfield avenged the loss in a 1993 rematch that featured the bizarre fan-man paraglider incident, winning back his titles in a war that proved his conditioning was second to none. But the third battle in 1995 was devastating. Bowe stopped Holyfield in the 8th round, inflicting the first stoppage loss of his career. Bowe's camp spread rumors about Holyfield's PED use, while Holyfield publicly questioned Bowe's work ethic and accused him of ducking Lennox Lewis. 32 rounds of warfare that defined a generation. The trilogy was boxing gold, but the personal cost was permanent. Moving on to a boxing legend who gave Holyfield his first professional loss and sent him spiraling into a health crisis that nearly ended everything. Michael Moore. On April 22, 1994, Moore, a slick southpaw, stepped in and did something nobody expected. He outboxed the real deal for 12 rounds. Moore won a majority decision despite being knocked down early, dethroning Holyfield in an upset that stunned the boxing world. The loss alone was devastating, but what followed made it worse. Holyfield was hospitalized post-fight with what was initially diagnosed as a heart condition, fueling widespread belief his career was finished. The diagnosis was later revised to dehydration and a shoulder injury, but the damage to his reputation was done. Moore's camp allegedly exploited knowledge of Holyfield's physical struggles before the fight, leaving Holyfield feeling like a sick man had been taken advantage of. Moore called Holyfield overrated and claimed he had exposed him as ordinary. But Holyfield got his revenge on November 8, 1997, dropping Moore 5 times before the referee stopped it in the 8th, reclaiming the WBA and IBF titles in dramatic fashion. The first loss was a turning point. The second fight was a statement, but the psychological scar from 1994 lingered for decades. Through it all, Evander Holyfield never backed down. He faced every hatred, absorbed every insult, and answered every bell. That is why they called him the real deal. If you enjoyed this video, click on the ones showing on your screen to enjoy more.